Thank you all for being with us today. Jay Ziabart, nutritionist and health educator, and I'm Megan Mescher Cox. We host this disease prevention and reversal summit and hope to be able to provide more information out there. So good information that's really evidence-based healthcare information and truly lifestyle medicine. Okay, so whole food, plant-based kitchen staples. We're going to go over what to buy, how to cook, and food prep, because all three are important. And the big takeaway is going to be to really keep it simple, unless you really love to cook meals that are really in depth. So let's talk about going shopping. So this is the diet of this. This is the typical standard American diet. 63% processed food, 25% animal food, 6% processed plant food, and only 6% whole plant food. So please keep in mind when you go into a supermarket, the supermarket's job is not to try to get you healthy and provide a nice, healthy, beautiful diet. The supermarket's job is to sell food. So if this is what people are eating, then this is what is going to be found in the store because they've got to move product, right? So you go in the store and you'll find this. Most aisles are full of highly processed food, ultra processed food, very devoid in fiber. And this is the kind of thing we want to avoid. One big thing to watch out for, please, please, please do not mistake what we're saying. We're not wanting you to switch from this kind of, or your body rather, it doesn't want you to switch from this kind of grocery shopping to this. This is not health. Health does not come in a bottle. So it's comes in beautiful vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, which are beans, lentils, and peas, and nuts and seeds. So this is a whole food plant-based diet pyramid. I show this because what we want is for our grocery cart to mirror this. Similar to this. This is where we're shopping, right? Where we're spending most of our time. So the kitchen staples, so again, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and then added spices or sauces, and that was Jay's talk. When we're going shopping, it's actually, the cart's gonna look like this, a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables, and then less as far as the grains and legumes. Typically, they're higher in calories, so we end up having a little bit less, but also if we buy them dry, when you do cook them, they're going to grow by about 70% when they absorb all their water. So smaller amounts when it's actually in your shopping cart. I want to just at least give a nod to the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. If you haven't heard those terms before, those are the foods that are worth buying. So dirty dozen. These are the foods that are worth buying organic. They're very dirty. They have tons of pesticides on them. Highly recommend if you can afford to buy organic, focusing on these foods as far as the ones where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. We will put this on our website so you can reference it there. Every year they come out with a new list since pesticides and farming practices change. So this is the current dirty dozen, or at least for last calendar year. Again, these ones you want to buy organic if you can afford to. This is clean 15. So these ones, it's not so important. Most of them, they have a peel or they use fewer pesticides. So, okay, and go ahead and buy them, even just the conventional methods, if again, as far as finances can go. I want to introduce the concept of bulk foods or bulk buying. So luckily we have Sprouts, at least in Ventura County area, but Sprouts around, there's other stores that sell in bulk. The cool thing about bulk is that you can find a lot of whole grains or legumes easier than you could find in even just a regular conventional Ralph's or Vons. Some areas are getting better, but it can still be hard to find some whole grains. So to give a picture of this, if you're not familiar with the bulk area, at least just walk around and start getting familiar with what's available. It's not all healthy. There is some candy in there too, even. The other option to keep in mind is to buy from afar. So to buy online shopping, I know Jay does that a lot. I do that a lot because some of the foods that are really great and that you learn to love, like for instance, buckwheat is one of my favorites. it's hard to find. And so if you're getting it online, you know that there's sources out there you can get them. So then the next area is legumes. So these are all dried legumes. This is only about a third of the legumes that are out there and available, but all sorts of different legumes. Again, I want to give a nod to canned beans, okay? Canned beans are still a whole food. So some of them, they'll have some salt added. Most of them will. For some reason, if you get the organic version of canned beans, they tend to have less salt than the conventional version. And you can also find low salt varieties, but please don't feel like you need to shy away from canned beans. These are still a whole food. Economically great, you can use the beans and make them from scratch, but if people are looking for convenience, canned beans are a great way to go. Another nod to this non-BPA lining, to look for that when you're shopping for canned beans. Then the last area here, at least that we're talking much about today, is whole grains. So tons of whole grains. When I go over this with patients in my practice, a lot of people are not familiar with a lot of whole grains, and it's not surprising because it's not common in the American diet to talk about what whole grains are. So up here, there's oatmeal. We are familiar with that, excuse me. Rolled oats or steel cut oats is what we're looking for. The quick oats, they've been a little processed, they're cut smaller so they'll cook faster. With that having happened, it will also absorb faster into your body. So we don't want that. We want your body to have it like absorb slowly and very physiologically. But barley, quinoa, farro, buckwheat, wild rice, a lot of these, again, we're not as familiar with. I'm sure we'll go over them, and we'll make a point to go over them in our future webinars. But please look out there and you can search around. It's kind of fun to try new ones. And then back to the sauces. Oftentimes to make things really easy, if you cook in bulk, but add different sauces to your meals every different time, even if the base of the meal, let's say it's beans and barley with 2 vegetables, if the base of the meal is the same, if you have different sauces, you can really make it taste different ways on different days of the week. So some staples for the kitchen, you do not have to have any of these. But these are ones, again, it's a convenience factor because that's what we're finding time and time again with people as far as a convenience factor. These are helpful in that fashion. So a really strong mixer, there are a number of them out there. You don't have to get this expensive Vitamix, but a really nice mixer, a pressure cooker. This is especially great if you're cooking whole grains or any legumes from scratch. But you can have brand new, a big pot of whole grains. You can have it in a good 5-7 minutes. So if you're cooking it on stovetop, it can be 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the grain. Or a food processor, especially good with some of the sauces, more in-depth sauces, that type of thing. Just as important is the food prep. So I would recommend, judging from what works or what doesn't work for people when they're making lifestyle change, when we've guided them along the path, what seems to work very well for people is to do grocery shopping and then just take a bulk of time and do your food prep at that time. So chopping things up, getting them ready to eat. So let's say you come home from work and you're very hungry and you don't want to have to cook something from scratch. You have everything cut up, that's more than half the battle. So big piece is, again, the food prep. And our fridge, and especially our freezer, is our best friend. When we're cooking, again, if we make a pot of whole grains or beans, don't shy away from making an extra and then just freezing it. So then instead of a processed, a prepackaged meal that makes it really easy, well, now you have your whole grain or your bean or whatever food you've made and frozen, that's a good whole food plant-based option that's just as convenient. So I go by the keep it simple. Since I have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old, it's keep it simple, silly. Really, for most people, if we can keep it simple, then that's what we're going to stick with, and sticking with it is what makes the big difference. So snacks don't have to be elaborate. Just grab a piece of fruit for a snack. If we want to get more legumes in the diet, but you're not really loving legumes yet, if we were going to start introducing them slowly, now they have all kinds of different pastas. So pastas made from chickpeas, made from lentils, made from black beans. So you get all the great increased the fiber and the protein that come from the legumes, but in a pasta version, which is something you might be more used to. These are just a couple pictures of plates. So these are specifically plates that, like what I've made to serve my kids. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be really super simple. But on this plate, you can see there's a huge amount of fiber, really like the bright colors that come from the green and from the sauce. I mean, really, really healthful. And my kids love it. I feel if kids like it, then we're good to go. Again, very simple here. I left this in, this is a kid's plate again. I know there's a lot of empty plate here, but that's because it's for a 5-year-old. But I put this on here because of this meatloaf here. So a lot of people like, foods that we've grown up with and we're used to. There's really great options. So this was a plant-based meatloaf. But when I make it, I always make a double batch. And a lot of patients do this too. Make a double batch and then freeze it. Again, it's the convenience factor for the future. And you can still enjoy your barbecue and everything else. So this actually was a homemade plant-based patty, but you get a nice full plate from a barbecue. No one's missing out on anything. In fact, it becomes where you enjoy that more. So I just want to run through buckwheat. So buckwheat, this is buckwheat. If you all have not seen it before, I know you can barely see it in here. This is how you make it. I've introduced this to a lot of patients and they've loved it so much that I feel like I'd like to introduce it to you all here. So buckwheat, the way you make it, it's oftentimes, we at least have it as breakfast meal, but people have it for other meals as well. So I soak it overnight. So just put water in it and you leave it out overnight, either on the counter or in the fridge. It's going to turn this kind of pinkish color and it gets a little thick. It's really viscous fluid. So then you strain it and then you cook it. And it's super simple to cook, 5 to 10 minutes, just like you would oatmeal. Buckwheat's great. It's gluten-free if people do have celiac disease or gluten allergies. And it's higher in fiber, higher in protein. So great option. And we usually serve it with slivered almonds and some dried fruit or whole fruit and some unsweetened soy milk. So just so you can walk away with some simple options to do. Last piece, just for us to continually check ourselves. So when they've done studies, more than 80% of us think that we are eating healthy and the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables, but in reality, it's only about 25% of us, less than 25% of us. So just to continually check ourselves. This 4-leaf survey is awesome. Dr. Lowe introduced me to this. You can find it online and you can run through it. The neat thing is that you can go through and see what your score is now. And then in a month, 2 months, 3 months, you can do it again and see where you land, if things have improved, and if so, by how much. So I'll just leave it at that. You can research it more if you're interested. Again, back to the greatest medicine of all is teaching people how not to need it at all. So with that, I would
questions.
Oh, okay. Salt-free butter. That's a good question. So butter is almost pure saturated fat and definitely not recommended if what we're going for is health. So salt-free butter, there's some out there. If the little bit of salt that is out of it is not very helpful, it's more of a tip, if people are using it in certain baking or that type of thing. But salt-free butter is not any healthier than regular butter. If that answers. And what do you freeze your leftovers in? Okay, that's a good question. Very good question. In our house, we don't have plastic. I freeze it in glass, and I usually cut it up first. Then once it's frozen, if I need that glass piece cookware again, then I'll take it out, and sometimes I'll just leave it in aluminum foil. So aluminum foil or glass, we won't get into it today, but trying to get away from plastics because of them being hormone modulators, so hormone disruptors.